In this story, I want to tell you what can happen if you spend too much time playing video games. This is a story from my life, and I advise you to watch it to the end, because only then you will understand the scale of the terrible events that happened to me. I used to think games were just games, pixels on a screen, a way to escape reality. But after what happened to me, I don't think I can ever play again, because I don't know where the game ends and where reality begins. I wasn't always like this. I had a normal life once, a job, friends. I used to go outside. But over the last few months, something changed. It started small, staying up late, skipping meals, losing track of time. But then it got worse. One day, I woke up and realized I hadn't been outside in over 2 weeks. I had lost my job, lost my girlfriend, and worst of all, I didn't even care, because all I cared about was the game. It wasn't just one game, it was all of them. Online shooters, strategy games, horror titles that blurred the line between reality and nightmare. I played everything. Day turned into night and night turned into day. And soon I stopped noticing the difference. But then things started getting weird. It was small at first. I would reach for something in real life, my phone, a drink, and my brain would expect it to snap into my hand like an in-game item. Or I would open a door and be genuinely confused for a second when I didn't see a loading screen. I laughed it off at first. Just sleep deprivation. But then, it got worse. One night, after a long gaming session, I walked to the kitchen to get a snack. As I reached for the fridge, I saw it, a health bar. It was faint, hovering in the corner of my vision. A real-life HUD. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. It was still there. I turned my head, it moved with me, like I was inside a game. I backed away from the fridge, heart racing. I shook my head. I was just tired. I needed sleep. But as I turned to go back to my room, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A small notification appeared in my vision, like a game prompt. Objective updated. Go back to your room. I froze. That wasn't real. Couldn't be real. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 10. When I opened them, the text was gone. I stumbled back to my room, slamming the door shut. I needed to get off the screen. I needed to reset my brain. So I unplugged my PC, shut it down. But as soon as I did, another notification popped up in my vision. Warning. Disconnecting from server. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't in a game. So why was my brain telling me I was? I ran to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. I gripped the sink, breathing hard. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. Then I heard it. A footstep in the hall. Slow, deliberate, coming toward my room. I spun around, heart pounding. Hello, I called out. No answer. I lived alone. I grabbed the nearest thing, a screwdriver from my desk, and crept toward the door. Another footstep, closer this time. I reached for the doorknob, my hands shaking. As soon as I touched it, another notification flashed in my vision. Interact? Y/N. I gasped, stumbling backward. The message flickered and distorted, glitching like a broken screen. Then, slowly, the door handle turned. From the outside, I braced myself. My mind raced. Had someone broken in? Had I finally lost my mind? The handle twisted all the way down. And then, it stopped. Silence. I held my breath, waiting. Then something slipped under the door. Piece of paper. I hesitated, then crouched down and picked it up. There was one single line written on it, in shaky, uneven handwriting. It wasn't a threat, wasn't a warning, just a single question. How many lives do you have left? I dropped the note instantly. What the hell was happening? I tore open the door. The hallway was empty. But the worst part? The walls. They looked different. The paint was off, the texture too smooth. And when I reached out and touched it, it didn't feel like a wall. Felt like a screen. Like I wasn't in my apartment anymore. Like I was inside a game. I wasn't playing anymore. I was being played. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the walls. Something was wrong. The texture was too smooth, too uniform, like a low-resolution render in an unfinished game. I touched it again. It didn't feel like drywall. Felt like plastic. Like a screen. A sudden buzzing noise filled the air. Not my phone. Not the fridge humming in the kitchen. Something deeper. Mechanical. Like a server booting up. I turned my head slowly. From the corner of my eye, I saw a flickering light coming from the living room. Like my TV had turned on by itself. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to move forward. My fingers were still curled around the screwdriver from earlier. I gripped it tighter. As soon as I stepped into the living room, the TV screen glitched. Static crackled across it. And then, a familiar game menu appeared. The same one I had been playing before I unplugged everything. New objective, sit down. My breath hitched. I took a step back. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. I grabbed the remote and shut the TV off. The screen went black. But then, from behind me, a chair creaked, like someone had just sat down. I whipped around. Nobody was there. But the chair at my dining table had moved. Pushed out. Facing me. Like it was waiting for me to sit. My chest tightened. Something was messing with me. I needed to get out. Now. I grabbed my keys from the counter and bolted for the door. I twisted the knob. Locked. I never locked it. I fumbled with the deadbolt, hands slick with sweat. I yanked the door open and stepped into the hallway. And my stomach dropped. My apartment building was gone. Instead of the familiar hallway with my neighbor's doors, I was standing in a long, empty corridor. The walls were smooth, featureless. The lighting was dim and flickering. And at the far end, a single red door. I turned back to my apartment. But the door was gone. Just a flat, blank wall. Like it had never been there at all. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I took a shaky step forward. The air was thick, too still. Like a room that had been sealed off for years. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The battery indicator flickered between 90% and 2% like it couldn't decide what was real. I shoved it back into my pocket. I had one choice. Move forward. I walked slowly, gripping my screwdriver like a weapon. My footsteps echoed in the emptiness. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn back. But there was nowhere to go. As I got closer to the red door, I saw something. A handprint smeared across the surface. Dark, sticky, blood. And underneath it, scratched into the paint with something sharp. Don't go in. My breath came in shallow gasps. I hesitated. Then, from behind the door, a muffled laugh. Low, distorted. Like someone was waiting for me. I gritted my teeth and backed away. I wasn't going in there. There had to be another way out. I turned and felt my stomach drop. The corridor wasn't empty anymore. There was someone standing at the far end. A figure, tall, motionless, watching me. I couldn't see their face. The light flickered, casting long shadows. But they were close enough that I could see one thing clearly. They were holding a controller. Like a game controller. Like they were playing me. I took a step back. So did they. I moved left. So did they. Every movement I made, they mirrored it exactly. Like they were in full control. Like I was the character. And they were the player. My hands turned ice cold. This isn't real. This isn't real. I clenched my fists, trying to force myself to wake up. But the figure took a step forward. Then another. And that's when I saw their face. It was me. Same face. Same clothes. Same dead, exhausted eyes. But something was wrong. His mouth was stretched into a wide, unnatural grin. And as he lifted the controller, another prompt flashed in my vision. Player 2 has entered the game. I turned and ran. I didn't care where I was going. I sprinted down the corridor, my pulse hammering in my skull. The red door was my only option. I reached it, yanked the handle, and the second I stepped through, everything changed. I was back. In my apartment. Lights on. TV off. The apartment door was wide open, leading back to the normal hallway. Like nothing had happened. Like I had imagined it all. I stood there, gasping for breath. My hands still shook. I turned to the dining table. The chair was back in place. The note from earlier was gone. It was like the game had ended. I let out a breath, forcing a shaky laugh. It had to be a psychotic episode. I had been awake too long. Too much time online. Too many games. That was all. Then I heard it. A faint clicking sound. Coming from my TV. I turned slowly. The screen was off. But in the reflection, I saw someone sitting on my couch. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. The reflection in the TV screen showed someone sitting on my couch. Motionless. Watching me. My breath hitched in my throat. I forced myself to move. Slowly. Every step toward the couch felt wrong. Like I was walking toward something I wasn't supposed to see. I reached the edge of the couch and stopped. The air was thick. Heavy. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. I had to look. I turned my head, and the couch was empty. I stumbled back, my stomach twisting. The room was completely normal. No one was here. But I knew. I hadn't imagined that. I had seen someone. My eyes flicked back to the TV reflection, and my stomach dropped, because he was still there, sitting on the couch, grinning, looking straight at me. I grabbed the remote and turned the TV on. The screen blinked to life. For a moment it was just static. Then, a loading screen. Continue. Yes. And oh, my hands turned to ice. I hadn't pressed anything. But the game was waiting. I reached for the remote. The second my finger hovered over and oh, the lights flickered. The room dimmed. The air grew colder. And then, a notification flashed in my vision. Warning. Quitting the game may result in permanent consequences. My stomach clenched. This was real. I wasn't imagining this. I backed away, trying to breathe. Then, something moved behind me. A soft creak. Like a door opening. But I was home alone. And all my doors were shut. I turned my head slowly. The hallway to my bedroom was darker than before. The light at the end of it flickered. And then, from inside my room, I heard it. Footsteps. Inside. I grabbed the screwdriver from my desk, my hands slick with sweat. I stepped forward, every inch of my body screaming don't. But I had to see. I had to end this. The hallway stretched out longer than I remembered. Too long. Like the game had changed the map. Like my own home wasn't real anymore. I reached the doorway. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, complete darkness. But I could feel someone in there, waiting, watching. I raised my hand and pushed the door open. The room was empty, completely normal, except for one thing, my gaming chair. It was turned away from the desk, like someone had just been sitting in it. My breath came in shallow gasps. I stepped closer. Something crunched under my foot. I looked down. A bloody thumbstick, ripped from a controller, smeared with something dark and sticky. I bent down, my chest tightening. And that's when I saw it. More pieces of a controller, scattered on the floor, each button coated in blood, like someone had been playing until their fingers bled. I backed away fast, my stomach twisting. Then, the chair spun around, by itself, and sitting there, staring back at me, was me. Not my reflection, not a glitch. It was another me, identical, except for the eyes. His eyes were pitch black. And he was smiling. I opened my mouth to scream, but he moved first. He lunged at me, hands grabbing my throat. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. His grip was ice cold, inhuman. His face was inches from mine, grinning wide. And in a distorted, static-laced voice, he whispered, "Player 1 has died." Everything went black. When I woke up, the game was still running. But something was different, because now, I was on the other side of the screen. I woke up gasping for air. My head throbbed. My vision was blurry. My hands, they weren't my hands. The skin was too pale. The fingers too thin. I looked down at my body. My clothes weren't the same. This wasn't what I had been wearing before. And then I saw the worst part. I was sitting in my gaming chair. My stomach twisted. I scrambled up, knocking over the chair, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. I turned to the mirror hanging on my closet door, and my heart stopped. The reflection wasn't mine. It was his, the other me. The one I saw before everything went dark. The version of me with black, lifeless eyes. And he was grinning. I staggered back. No. No, no, no. I grabbed at my face, feeling my own skin, my own hair. Felt real. It had to be real. I was me. I was real. But when I looked back at the mirror, the other me just tilted his head. Like he was studying me. Like I was the reflection now. Then the TV flickered on. My entire body locked up. I didn't touch anything. The remote was across the room. But the screen glowed to life. And in the center, a live feed of my apartment from someone else's perspective. I wasn't holding the camera. I wasn't recording this. But someone was. Someone standing in the hallway, just out of sight, watching me. I turned toward the doorway so fast I nearly tripped. There was nothing there. But when I turned back to the TV, the feed had changed. Now it showed a different room. A dark room. A game lobby. With a single chair. And someone sitting in it. Tied to it. I squinted. The figure in the chair was wearing my clothes. Had my face. Had my body. But his eyes. They were wide with fear. He was screaming. Mouth open, but no sound came out. Like he was trapped on mute. The realization hit me like a truck. That was me. The real me. And whatever I was now, I wasn't in control anymore. I reached for the TV, fingers trembling. The screen flickered again. And a new message appeared. Player 1 has been replaced. Replaced. The word rang in my skull like a death sentence. I turned back to the mirror, heart pounding. The other me was still there. But now, he was waving. And behind him, I saw my room. But not how I left it. It was wrong. The colors off. The walls too smooth. Like a game environment. I reached out, pressing my palm to the glass. Felt solid. But then, my reflection smiled wider. And pressed back. From the other side, the room started to distort. The walls warped. My vision glitched. Like I was losing connection. And then, the TV screen flashed one last message. New player has joined the game. I fell to my knees. This wasn't just a psychotic break. This wasn't sleep deprivation. Something had taken my place. And now I was stuck on the other side. I let out a silent scream. And then, everything went black. I don't know how much time has passed. I don't know where I am. I only know one thing. I can still see him. The version of me that stole my life. I see him through the TV screen. Through your screen. Every time I load a game, every time a menu pops up, I see him. Watching. Waiting. For another player. For you. Everything that happened was a slow descent into dissociation and obsession. The protagonist played so much that reality blurred into the game world. The notifications and glitches were his brain trying to cope with losing his grip on what was real. The other him was the part of his mind that wanted to be consumed by the game. And by the end he lost. Someone else took over his life. Whether it was a breakdown, an alternate personality, or something even worse. Now he's just stuck in the background. Watching. Waiting. For the next person to play. Have you ever stared at a loading screen for too long? Ever felt like something was watching you through it?